Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning we would like to look at the subject, Yah's last word to America. Some years ago, 2015, I committed my thoughts to print in the book, Yah's last word to America. At the time of writing, it seemed to me as if it was a vision. Even the very title, The Last Word to America. And I recall it seemed then that I heard a wee voice saying, publish the book. Because in my evaluation and analysis of this land, they say, of the brave and of the free, it seems to me that this land is no longer brave, or is it free? Because when a man's soul is in sin, he cannot be free. And it came to me that this great America is at that moral place where generation Noah was before the flood. Because they have torn down the ordinances, the laws, the commandment of the Sabbath, and the commandment of marriage, they are trodden underfoot. And we can see the unfolding events that are taking place in America, particularly among the leaders. And many of us will recall that 7 years ago, August 21st, 2017, there was a solar eclipse in America, and the 8th of April, which will be the start of the new year, will be another solar eclipse. This morning we have good reasons to look beyond that deterministic view of what a solar eclipse really means to the average person in the street. The solar eclipse, they'll tell you, is when the moon moved, the new moon moved between the sun and the earth and blocks its rays that it cannot shine directly on the earth. The shadow, whether the umbra or the penumbra, whichever one, that's the shadow that is cast on the earth. So this morning, we want to look at that, and we want you to know that these eclipses, in fact, there are three. There was another one in October, I think it was October 14th, 2023. That these are not stochastic events in that they are random. No, there is no randomness about them. I believe that Yah has calculated right and is using his finger to write a sign to us. If only we could understand, because let's go to the book of Bereshit. Bereshit, that's Genesis, and we will just remind ourselves what Yah said in the early pages of this book. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for the days and years. Let there be signs. Let there be oath, OTH, and season, moed. Let there be moeds for you." He's not here talking about spring, summer, autumn, or winter. That's not what he's talking about. He's saying, way back in Genesis 1, I have appointed some days for you, days in which I want to meet with you. And he outlines those days in Leviticus chapter 23, and he's saying the cycle of the Sabbath, the 7-day Sabbath, is the first of all those. And I want to speak to you through the signs of the moon and of the sun and of the stars. Therefore, you need to understand them. So we understand that. And if we understand that, I want you to understand this also. Come with me to Exodus, Shemot, and we will look at chapter 12, Exodus chapter 12, as the children of Israel left Egypt on their way to a new destination. The word here says, "And Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month," which month? Nisan or Habib? It wasn't that then, because remember, at this particular juncture of time, Yah changed the calendar from a fall calendar to a spring calendar. That's what he did. He says, this month, which would have been Tishri, the 7th month, he made it the 1st month. Understand that. He says this is the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year. So a month ago, when all the world, the people of the world, were celebrating January as a new year, Moses wrote it down and say, the new year is Nisan or Habib, which we know in the Hebrew text is likened to the month of April. So the question must be asked, who are you following? Who is your king? Is it Caesar or is it Yah? So interestingly, we were given 4 blood moons, starting in 2014, stretching all the way to 2015, and they spoke to us in ways that we could understand that Yah was sending messages to us, because they're all of them fell on the Hebrew calendar. But if you were looking at the Gregorian calendar, you wouldn't see anything. And I recall, perhaps you will too, when the new president came into power, not Biden, but the one before Biden, who is named Trump. And we remember, it's as if Yah was saying, this is the last trump. It's as if he was saying that. And what intrigued me about the day of the inauguration, as you will recall, that obelisk in Washington was all ablaze. I still have a picture of that you could see that obelisk standing there in the center, all ablaze, as if the sun was trying to tell us something. And on that day of inauguration, the president was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. And as you recall, that his first day in office, full day that is, was on the seventh day Sabbath. And his first major speech lasted 77 minutes. And as I think through that, as I totted up the votes, the electoral college vote that he won, beating Hillary Clinton, he won by 77 votes. And at what time must you ask yourself, is this a coincidence or is it prophecy? Got to ask yourself that. So we recall that when they left Egypt, Yah was trying to close out a whole system and to bring in a new one. Watch what he does. He says that 7 months from Tishri, we're now going to deal with what? Nisan. So he changed the calendar. And so the first day of the 7th constellation from the old year, which was Aries, he changed everything. And moreover, he said, you're going to have a Passover on the 14th day of the month. So that's 2 7s, 14. And he said, on the day you have the Passover, it's going to be on the 21st hour of the day. That's 3 7s, 21. So you see all the 7s coming together back then at the Passover to close out the system. And now Yah seems to be doing the same thing again. And we should be studying this. We should. We should. Because we recall that in August 21, which was 7 years ago, when we had that eclipse stretch all the way to the Carolinas and left a mark. It left a mark. A line across America. And we're made to understand that this great American eclipse that is going to take place on the 8th of April 2024, which will be the Hebrew 5784. Because in the year that we spoke about earlier, when the president was inaugurated, in the Hebrew, that was 5777. So you see all the 7s were coming together, and they're coming together again because Yah is about to close out a system. If only we could see it with the eyes of our pineal gland. We've got to understand that. So what is Yah saying? What is Yah saying? What interests me a great deal, and perhaps should interest you, is the fact that in 2017, when we had this great eclipse, the sun, what did it do? The eclipse passed 7 cities. Are you with me? This great North America eclipse, it passed 7 cities, and all those cities are named Salem. It passed the city of Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Missouri, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Now, that can't be a coincidence. And all the cities are named Salem. Now, you well know what Salem means. Salem means peace. Salem means peace, from the root word shalom. So shalom came in 2017, and he's telling us this time, this eclipse is peaceful. This is peace. For 7 years, there will be peace. But this time, after the 8th, is he telling us there will be war? War. And I don't mean like we have seen in recent times. I mean the time of Jacob's trouble. That's what I mean. Because you remember what he said to them in Matthew 10:34-36. Think not that I have come to bring peace. Because he knew, he being the Prince of Peace, they would kill him. Are you with me? They killed peace. So if you kill peace, you crucified peace, then war must come, wrath must come, because you crucified peace. Oh, yes. and he's the word, remember? He's the word. And Hebrews 4:12 tells us, for the word of Yah is what? Is active and sharpened like a two-edged sword. That's what he said. And it cuts to the quick, the soul and the spirit. So he says he's coming back this time with a two-edged sword. And now you understand why King Solomon, who is Shalom, because Shalom means peace. And throughout his reign, there was peace in Jerusalem. But you notice when those 2 women came to Solomon in chapter 3 of 1 Kings, what did he ask for? He asked for a sword. So the first king of priests used the literal sword, but the second and most preeminent of the kings of peace is Yeshua. He used the word as a double-edged sword to cut to the quick. That's what we're talking about this morning. This eclipse that is coming on America, it cuts to the quick. Oh, yes. Now, what's important to understand that as I indicated earlier, that the first eclipse put a line across America. The second one will put another line like an X, a huge X, a gigantic X. And what's interesting is that at the point of their intersection is at a place called Carbondale, known as Little Egypt. Little Egypt. But then there was another eclipse in October 23, 2023, October 14th. Now, I want you to look at it pictorially. I had tried to get a huge copy of this, but I couldn't. This is what it looks like if you can see it. There is the X across America, if you can see it. But when you turn it on the side, it looks like a V, Vav. Now, perhaps you'll understand what this sign is. It is the Aleph Tav. So Yah, using two eclipses within 7-year period, is writing in the sky Aleph Tav. In the word we hear him say, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. But in the Hebrew, he's saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. That's the sign that he's putting in the air over America on the 8th of April, 2024. That's what's happening. And he says, in the last 7 years, when the eclipse traveled to the 7 cities that are named Salem, he said, that's peace. But this time, it's not going to be like that at all. It's not going to be like that. So we must try and understand the history of eclipses. We must understand the history of eclipses so we can understand what is likely to happen in our time. So turn with me to the book of Lucas. That's Luke, and we will look at chapter 4. And the word here says, and Yeshua, being full of the Ruach, returned from Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, being 40 days tempted of the devil. And in those days he did eat nothing, and when they were handed, he afterward hungered. And the devil said unto him, If thou be the Son of Elohim, command the stones to be made bread. It's important you understand when this took place. He had just been baptized, and the word said he was led out into the wilderness. And he was in the wilderness for 40 days. And when he came out, he went into the temple and he began to read from the book of Isaiah or Isaiah. That's what the word says. Don't miss this. This happened on the first day of Elul. Elul is the 6th month. So when Yeshua came out of the wilderness, 40 days from the first day of Elul took us to the 10th day of the 7th month, which is the Day of Atonement. That's when he went into the temple and read from the book of Isaiah. He was declaring the year of Jubilee. Are you with me? He was declaring the year of Jubilee. We know that a jubilee is 50 years. We know that. And perhaps if you do your math and you multiply 120 by 50, you see how much you get. What point am I making? That Peter had told us in 2 Peter 3 and verse 8, that don't forget this one thing. Don't be ignorant of this one thing, because a day is 1,000 years in Yah's sight. And we're now at that point, that 6,000 years. I am the Alpha, says Yah, and I am the Aleph and the Ta. I'm the beginning and the end, the first and the last. He says, you will know when I'm coming. I will put signs, says Luke, in the air. But if you can't read, even as Belshazzar couldn't read in Daniel chapter 5, you would even know what is being said. He is writing the Aleph Tav in the sky in America. That ought to wake you up. He said, I'm coming the first time in 2017, and I'm going to pass 7 cities, and all of them are named Salem, peace. But this time, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. Oh, yes. So Yeshua went into the temple, he read from the book, and he says, I now declare this. He said, today the prophecy is fulfilled in your very eyes. Hear me. But then in Matthew chapter 12, he likens himself to whom? Let's go there, Matthew chapter 12. And let's go to verse 38. The word here says, then certain of the scribes and of the Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we would see a sign from thee. You remember we read in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14 that he said, I will show you sign. He said, the word here for sign is oath. I'm going to show you sign. But in order for you to know what the sign said, you've got to be able to understand what the moon and the sun and the stars are saying. So they come to him and they say, we want to see a sign. Even as we are now seeing sign, but we're not comprehending what the sign is. If you stay on this English alphabet with the 26 word, you're going to miss out. You got to get back on the Hebrew. Aleph, Bet, Gimel. Are you with me? You got to go on that and stay on it. Yeah, change the calendar, and nobody told you. You did not receive the email that the calendar had changed. You are still celebrating January as a new year. You are way behind. April is coming on the 8th, and this is the start of the year, and you are already 2 months in the year. Which year are you keeping? Come on. And you behave as if it doesn't matter. Has Yah ever said anything and it didn't matter? Has Yah ever said anything that didn't matter? There is no variableness in him. None. Not at all. And so he likens himself to Jonah. And the people came to him, we want a sign. People are still saying that. People are still reading the word for you. And they're saying, when he comes, there's going to be a sign. Here it is. The sign is here. 7 years ago, he put a sign and you did not even notice it. 7 years ago. Let's read it. Verse 39, chapter 12 of Matthew. But he answered and said unto them, an evil, what kind of generation? An evil and an adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. Did you get that? Let me explain. We know what adultery is when a man takes another man's wife. He steals because that wife did not belong to him. Yah put that man and that woman together, and he said, what I put together, let no man separate them. No judge, no court, supreme or otherwise, let no man separate them, because only the sleep of death should come in. That's what he said. And because we have read and we have understood that 1 in 2 of all marriages end in a divorce, he said it's an adulterous generation. You seek a sign. You are more preoccupied with signs than you are in getting your own life in a state of readiness for my coming. So they asked him. He said, for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's body, or in the fish's body, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Why did Yeshua compare himself with Jonah? Simple. Jonah went to Nineveh on the same time, not the same period, because he was before Yeshua. He went to Nineveh on the first day of Elul. That's when Jonah went to Nineveh. Mosul. That's what Nineveh is, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Today, that's Mosul in Iraq. And so when Jonah went after his encounter with the fish, he declared 40 days and Nineveh would be destroyed. Jonah knew that 40 days from the first day of Elul would take us to the 10th day of the 7th month, which is Tishri, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. He knew that. And today the believers don't even know that. You see how far we have fallen behind. We say knowledge have increased. What knowledge? What knowledge? We have increased decreasingly. That's what has happened. And so Yah is wanting us to know that he's coming to Little Egypt. That's where the X intersect. That's where he's coming. And he's coming on the first day. Are you with me? The first day of Nisan, Abib. That's April the 8th. That's the new moon. That's the new month. He did say, did he not, that every month begins with a new moon. That's what he says. But we don't follow that. Many of us, I should say. And so we've got to take this thing serious. Because Yah is saying in 2 Chronicles 7 and verse 14, if my people who are called by my name should what? Humble themselves and pray. What will he do? He says, I'll heal their land. Does America need healing? Oh, yes. Can you not see what is happening? Can you not see presidents, congressmen, senators, they're under investigations for corruption and all manner of things. And you have liars trying other liars. It is sad. It's a sad indictment on the nation. And you cannot but think this is Yah's last word to America. You cannot but think that. You will not see a sign except the sign of me going into the heart of the earth, says Yeshua. And he likened that to Jonah. But it's important for us to get the dates right. He went in on the first day of Elul and came out on the 10th day. If you didn't get it, what I'm saying is these dates are judgment days. Judgment day. The 10th day of the 7th month is the day of judgment. And you almost get the impression here that, yeah, he's saying, I'm now come to judge America. But in the same breath, you hear men saying, we're going to make America great again. And people believe that. And may I warn you, or should I remind you, that, well, you know what? Let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. Because it's important that we do that to learn the lessons of the past. The word here says that there was a king who didn't seem to learn anything from his experience. His name is Belshazzar. The king made a great feast. He made what? You didn't hear me. I said, Yah gave us some feasts, but he wasn't keeping that feast. He made his own feast like the people today. He made his own feast and he invited people. The lords and the ladies, the barons of the day were at this feast. How many? He said 1,000 of his nobles, and they drank wine before 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, did you hear me? While he tasted the wine, King Belshazzar, thy father the king, I say, what? This is Daniel now. After the whole event is registered in his mind, Daniel is saying, you did not listen. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm giving you the outcome, but let's go back to the process. Are you with me? As he drank the wine, he commanded them to bring the golden and the silver vessel, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem. You didn't hear me. Let me try again. He says, the vessels, gold and silver, were taken out of the temple before Jerusalem was destroyed. What does that tell you? You missed it. All right. Before the next destruction of the temple come, the people who are the chosen vessel must come out of the temple first. Must come out. Are you with me? But those vessels that Nebuchadnezzar took out, he had put them in his storehouse. He had not used them, but his delinquent son, his unruly co-regent, Belshazzar, the man with party spirit, even like the world has a party spirit. He took them out, asked for them to be poured out with drinks. Babylon's best ale. That's what he did. It says that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. And they brought the golden vessel that were taken out of the temple of the house of Elah, which was in Jerusalem. And the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines, they drank from them. You know, these vessels were vessels that were used during the feast days, crafted by holy hand. You remember when Moses was coming from Egypt, and Yah skilled some of these men to make these vessels. Here, this delinquent youth of a king was now treated with utter contempt. And to my utter chagrin, I could not believe that the king would have been so ignorant of what happened to his own father, Nebuchadnezzar. But he was. And the word says, in the same hour. In the what? In the same hour came what? Fingers. You didn't get me. I said the same finger that wrote this is the same finger that's writing on the skies of America through the eclipse. Are you with me? Yah wrote, Babylon is fallen. But they couldn't read it. Just like the people today, they have bought binoculars. And they're all jockeying up to go and view this great eclipse. People from all over the world. But they don't know it's the finger of Yah that is writing and putting an X on America. They don't understand. In the same hour. That's what he says. Fingers wrote. The fingers of a man, a bloodless hand, and wrote over against what? The menorah. Did you get that? You missed it. Let me try again. It says that the hand wrote by the menorah where he could see the light. What is the light? The sun that we have. And what is happening today or on the 8th? He says the rays from the sun are going to be blocked. But you're still going to be able to decide because it's the finger that is writing, not the sun. Now let's go back to Genesis. The scientists tell us that we need the sun and we need the moon, because the moon controls, the weather pattern and so on and so forth. And we need the sun for fruits to grow. Are you with me? They are what you would call sine qua non, meaning without which you can't do without them. So the sun, the moon, and the star there represent sine qua non, meaning they are essential things for us to have. But I want to remind you that the sun and the moon were created on the 4th day, by which time Yah had already made the plants and the trees. And he had long since said, let there be light. And there was light before the 4th day. And therefore, a question that must be asked, and you should answer, is if the earth existed days before the sun was made, what was it revolving around at that time? There was no moon, there was no sun. What was it revolving around, scientists? That's why we sing, how great thou art. That's why we sing that. Because it's beyond our comprehension, except that which he reveals in his word, a reduction to word of his character in his word. That's what we're reading today. He said, I'm going to write I'm going to send you a letter. But the word says, in the days of Babylon, we're now dealing with Mr. Babylon. So we read the history and understand what took place in literal Babylon so we can understand what is going to take place in Mr. Babylon. He said when he wrote that on the wall, the people couldn't understand. And they sent for the what? The men of Oxford and the men of Harvard and Princeton and Yale and Cambridge. Many men, they were degreed, but they were, unlike Daniel, they were not decreed. Let's read it. Then the king's countenance was changed, and in his thoughts, and his thoughts troubled him, so the joints of his loins loosed, and his knees began to applaud him. They were shaking. That's what the word says. Oh, yes. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers. My question is, where was the DJ at this time? They were dancing and drinking. Where were the bartenders? Huh? Where were they? Where are the ladies and the lords that came? Let's read. The king cried out, bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So you notice Belshazzar was not the ruler. He was the second ruler. He was co-regent. His dad, who is really not Nebuchadnezzar, but was on mission elsewhere. And so he was running the empire. And he's saying, whoever is able to read this and tell me, you will be after me, your third. He's trying to create a trinity, isn't he? So my point is, we are at that particular prophetic place where Babylon was. That Yah is writing with his finger in the sky, and he's saying, I am writing Aleph. What? Tav. But only those who can read and who are on my calendar will understand what I'm writing. So I'm speaking really to the Daniels of my generation. Oh, yes. It says the king was greatly troubled. We can anticipate subsequent to the 8th of April, people are going to be troubled. Oh, yes. They're going to be troubled. Oh, yes. Because when those eclipses will make this X on the USA, it's a sign. It's a sign. Because many people today, they anticipate, and scientists tell us this, that the San Andreas Fault, there is a defect in the tectonic plates there. Oh, yes. But we've got to understand something, that there is a greater fault in America. And I'm just talking about the moral fault that it has. But there's a fault in the crust that is 6 times greater than the San Andreas Fault. And it covers this area where the point of X is going to be. And America is not new to earthquakes, because when you read history in 1811 and 1812, there was a series of earthquakes in America. And we're made to understand, at the time, the Mississippi River ran backwards. That's history. That great Mississippi River, it ran backwards during the course of the earthquake. I wonder what will happen subsequently if Yah does really come with his wrath on America. What will happen? So the king sent for Daniel. No, Daniel was not invited to his party. But they remember that there was a man in the empire who could interpret dreams. Well, I'm not here trying to interpret dreams. I'm trying to interpret reality. Because the word tells us that when he comes back, and I mean not physically now, but on the 4th of April, the 8th of April, I should say, there is going to be Aleph Tav. Oh, yes. On the map of America. That's going to happen. Now, that's serious stuff. That's serious stuff. Because we talked earlier about the eclipse that took place when Jonah went to Nineveh. That was in 763 BC, the 15th of June. That's when it was. And it's called the Bar-Sagili eclipse. So you get the impression here, historically, there is a pattern, not a random pattern, but a prophetic pattern, that when Yah is about to do something, he sends an eclipse. That's what he does. And this one is coming to America. And you remember when Yeshua spoke to the people in Jerusalem, he said, only if you knew the day of your visitation. You don't know. You know, they have a saying where I'm from that if you put a man who can't read, if you put his name on a piece of cake, we call it bulla. He said if you put his name on it, he will eat it and don't even know. Yah is riding in the skies in America, and the people don't know. They don't know. And moreover, people are not preparing themselves because they don't consider it serious. They see it as an adventure, a kind of moon landing. Not knowing the moon is about to really land. Are you with me? And so when Daniel came, Daniel is now called to interpret. And Daniel says, what did Daniel say? They told him in verse 11, there is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the Kodesh Elah. And in the days of his father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the Elohim, was found in him. When the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magician, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. We are a nation that, when I say I'm speaking America, that prides itself in having the greatest lawyers, greatest physicians, greatest intellectuals, greatest scientists. They will even say greatest preachers, greatest teachers. They say they're great. We had those same astrologers in Babylon, and they could not read what Yah wrote. In the same way, today, the people are not seeing that this is Aleph Tav, that comes from the Hebrew alphabet. And that's what he's writing in the sky. They can't see that. So they call Daniel. And Daniel spoke to the king. Oh, yes. O thou king, verse 18. The Most High, Elah, gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and greatness and honor and majesty. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled in fear before him. Whom he would, he slew, and whom he would, he kept alive, and whom he would, he set up, and whom he would put down. But when his heart was what? Lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took him honor from him. Shall I interpret this in the existential language of the day? Daniel says, your father before you was given great blessings and a kingdom, but when his heart was lifted up, it was taken from him. America, those kingdoms before you, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, these are the biblical ones. Shall we now go local? Great Britain, Rome, Ottoman, Germany, Soviet, all these. Did you not learn anything from their experience? That Great Britannia that ruled the waves at the sun never set on its empire. Where is she today? Where is that 3 lions today? America? Now then, it seems as if the word is saying, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Your kingdom will be taken from you and given to the Medes and the Persians. How did it happen? Bible tells us in Isaiah that 150 years before King Cyrus was born, Yah named him and said he will be the man. And he climbed up through the Euphrates River. You hear me? King Cyrus climbed up through the Euphrates River. He dredged it and came through the gates of Babylon. Hear me? The Bible tells us in chapter 16 that when the Euphrates River drying up, some Cyrus is coming. Where? To Mr. Babylon. We got to understand these things. We got to understand the existential relevance of the word and frame the events with the word of God so we can understand and share it with each other. The Euphrates is drying up. So you know Cyrus is coming, but not the Cyrus of old, not the Cyrus of the Medes and the Persians, another Cyrus. So come with me to the book of Yoel, chapter 3. Yoel chapter 3. For behold, in those days, what days? The now days. And at that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather the nation. Did you get that? Let me try again. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for the people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among nations and parted my land. Now it says there, these things are synonymous. When he brings the people, at the same time, he will gather the people, the nations, to fight there at the valley of Jehoshaphat. So hold it. It's been 70 plus years that people have told us that, yes, people have gone to Israel. So if they have gone over to Israel, why have they not gathered to the valley of Jehoshaphat? Because they're synonymous according to the word. Are we to assume, therefore, that perhaps some of those who are there now claiming to be Abraham's children are really not Abraham's children? They are, as Genesis 9:27 say, they are merely staying in Jacob's tent. Am I to assume that, or should we just leave that for pondering? Oh, yes. Let's read on. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine. They bartered his people away, and they drank, just like Belshazzar. Yea, and what had he to do with me? Now, you've got to ask yourself, which group of people over the years throughout history have been sold and bartered with? Which group of people? And which group of people, according to Deuteronomy chapter 30, were sold back to Egypt as slaves and came back as ships? Which group of people? Which group? We don't have to conjecture, do we? We know that the Negro Shemites who migrated from Israel, who are not descendants of Ham, but descendants of Shem, migrated to the west part of Africa, and it was there that the Sabaeans, hear me, we read that in Job, but the Sabaeans, and it's here in Joel, meaning the Arabs, sold them. And then they were subsequently sold to the Europeans and the Westerners. Are you with me? That's our kin. But that's not how they would have us believe those things. And someone somewhere might say, Elder, are you trying to tell us that yes, people are not all of those people who are there in the land today? Well, I don't have an opinion on it. I would rather speak to you through the prophets. And so come with me to the book of Zephaniah, Stephanus, chapter 3. Well, before we even go to 3, let me go to 1. so I can identify who the prophet is, so you know what we're talking about. Chapter 1, the word of Yahweh which came from Stephanas, the son of Cushi. You hear that? This prophet, his father's name is Cushi. Cushi, we know, is bronze, black, that kind of a shade. And so I just want to emphasize that point. The son of Gedaliah and the son of Amariah, the son of Ezekiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Yehudi. Did you hear me? He says his lineage go all the way to King Hezekiah. And if we could trace this even further, we're talking about King David. You better hear me. I have no opinion on it other than what Yah says. He says his daddy is Cushi, and the line through which he come is from Hezekiah, one of the good kings of Israel, and it stretches all the way back to the man called David. Are you with me? So now we know who we're talking about and to whom we're talking. Let's project forward. Chapter 3. And let's read verse 9 and 10. For then will I turn to the people a pure language. A what? You get what I'm saying, don't you? I just showed you what Yah is writing in Hebrew, but he's saying, my people don't understand it. So he said, I'm going to give them a pure language. I'm going to get them to revert back to the Hebrew so they can read this like Daniel. That's what he's saying. And they may all call upon my name. They won't say Lord or God. They will say Yahweh. They will call upon my name and serve him with one consent. With what? Hear me. He says they won't be this thing where this denomination is teaching that and that church is teaching that and the one down the road is teaching. He says they will have one consent based on Hebrews 12, verse 23, the General Assembly. There will be no variation in the doctrine. Yeshua said, go and teach all nations all that I have commanded you. How then could you be worshiping on Sunday and you on Friday and you on Sunday and all saying it's a Sabbath? No. He made one Sabbath and he put it apart and says rest. And I hear people say, well, we can choose a Sabbath. Really? And a Monday and a Tuesday and a month? You're really Romish, aren't you? Yes. You got to put away this Romishness. Romishness is foolishness. The word says that. And so let's come to verse 10. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Where? Now, the prophet is taking us in a geographical place. It's a specific location. He wants you to know. He says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliant, even the daughter of my disperse. Do we know what disperse mean? Scattered. He says, my people are from Ethiopia. These are who have been scattered. He says, they shall bring my offering. What's the offering? The Ten Commandments that they have in Axum. So what do I do with a text like that? When a prophet from Yah comes to me and he tells me his daddy is Cushi and his foreparents include King David, Solomon, and Hezekiah, do I throw that out? I would be at risk, would it not? When he said, don't pull out and don't put in. Don't change my word. So that's what he says. I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring this eclipse, this solar eclipse across America. The last time I came, he says, I came in peace. Did you not see how I traveled across those 7 cities, all named Salem in different states? I did that. That was peace. This time it's not shalom at all. No, I don't think so. And therefore, we can ignore it if we want to, but we would do so at our own peril. So, what am I saying? As I said before, that we have the conversion of these 2 eclipses taking place. And as I indicated earlier, they are not stochastic. There is no randomness about them. None. And in that regard, it is a divine pattern. So there is no probabilistic constraint, no probability where you can predict and say, no, 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 no. That's not what we're dealing with. There is no random variableness in what is happening. Yah says, this will happen at that particular time, and 7 years from now, I'm coming back to do this. But it's not in peace. Not in peace. So, what shall we do? What shall we do? Except we prepare ourselves for this event. And I don't mean by way of buying binoculars. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying this is serious stuff. That Yah is writing in the sky of America, Aleph Tav. The one that the eclipse that took place in October 14, 2023, was what they call the ring of fire. Why? Because when the moon does not fully cover the sun's rays, there is an outer ring in the circumference of it that looks like a ring, and they call that the ring of fire. That happened in October 14, 2023. Are you with me? So, what we're dealing with now is Yahweh is coming to Little Egypt. It's too coincidental to be a coincidence. It has to be planned this way, divinely planned that way. And many of the states that are being covered, the southern state this time, are states that carried slaves and enslaved slaves in this country. It's there in the history. It's there in the word. And he tells you who his dispersed people are from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. And some of them have lost their identity. They don't carry their own names anymore. They don't even speak to their Yah in the way. They call him all kind of names. Are you with me? This beautiful land of people have been miseducated and robbed of their heritage. But I want to make this thing clear as I close that Paul says that He who is a Jew outwardly is not a Jew. So we can't beat our chest and say, well, I was born in Israel. That means nothing. Oh, I was born in Jerusalem. Oh, I was baptized in the Jordan. No, no, that's not what it is. Galatians 6:16, you said the Israel of Yah are the ones who accept Yeshua. These are they who can call Abraham their father. Are you with me? And it doesn't matter where you're born, because, let's go back to our daddy and read what he wrote. When I say daddy, I mean King David. Are you with me? Come with me to Psalm 87. Psalm 87, David says, well, it's not even David, it says the sons of Korah. Sons of Korah. But ideally, most of the Psalms are King David. But this one is written by Korah, sons of Korah. It says, its foundation is in the holy mountains. Yahweh loveth the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of who? Jacob. Honorable things are spoken of there in the city of Elohim, Selah. I will make mention of Rahab. Wow. Of who? You see who is in the kingdom? And some of those who think they'll make it won't. He said, I will make mention of Rahab and the Babylon to them that know me. Did you get that? It doesn't matter where you are as long as you know him. Behold, the Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia. This man was born there, and of Zion it shall be said. Did you get that? He says it doesn't matter where you're born, where you worship, as long as you accept Yeshua and you keep his commandment and have the faith of Yeshua, you are born in Zion. That's who is a Jew. And perhaps we shouldn't say Jew. That's who is a Yehudi. Did you get that? So let me say this, that let us keep watch, because we're watchmen of Zion. And as we see the writing on the wall, what we ought to do is to be able to provide an answer to the questions that they have. So in that way, we are the apologist, but we don't have an apology. Are you with me? An apologist is really someone who provides answers to the question. He defends the truth. But an apologist is somebody who apologizes. We don't have that. We are the apologist without an apology. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.